Okay, next we're working on the washout, and for the washout it's very straightforward what we need to do. It's purely a case of Loctiting this screw and the one the other side, and also Loctiting these in place, and then this is ready to be installed onto the main shaft. Okay, and once you've Loctited the washout, the next thing to do is to do exactly the same thing with the swash plate, because all of these balls are loose and need Loctiting. So that's the next thing to do. Okay, and then you should find, having done all of that, you'll end up in a situation where you've got these 5 components: the rotor head as we've built it so far, swash plate, mast locking collar, washout base and a main shaft. And basically we just need to insert the main shaft into the bottom of the head block and put in our Jesus bolt to secure it in place. And the washout goes on next, followed by the swash plate, followed by the mast locking collar, and that's our components installed onto the main shaft. Okay, and once you put all those components onto the rotor head, you should end up with something that looks pretty much like this. And I've connected up some of these ball links as well, so the flybar cage to the washout arm and the washout base to the inner swash plate ring connected up. Obviously we haven't built up the other push rods for the rest of the head just yet, and we'll be coming on to that a bit later. But for now, that's our rotor head complete, apart from sorting out the paddles. And for that, what we need to do is we need to make sure we've got the same amount of flybar sticking out each side of the flybar cage here, and we can use our digital calipers just to check that. And then once we've got that, we can do up these grub screws here with Loctite to Loctite them in place, and then we can install our flybar paddles. So initially I'm going to get this gap set right, and then show you the installation of the flybar paddles. Okay, so here we have our flybar paddles, and basically these just thread onto the end of the flybar here. You screw them on until you've got enough flybar in there that the little grub screws here can bite onto it when you do them up. So screw these down, and then we need to make sure that the gap between the flybar cage and the edge of our paddle is identical for each paddle either side of the head, and that will give us a nicely balanced head and no vibration issues. Okay, that's our paddle installed. If I just move this way a bit, you can see the paddle installed there. And this gap here between the edge of the paddle there and the flybar cage here is 145 millimeters. Make sure that you Loctite the grub screws, which are both above and below the blade here, and also you want to make sure you set these blades so that they are in line with the flybar cage here, so when this is horizontal, the flybar is also horizontal. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is put our main gear into our frames. It's our main gear with the one-way already installed. We're going to put that into our frames and then insert the rotor head down through the top of the frames and install the rotor head onto our machine. Okay, so here we have our rotor head installed into our machine, and you can see the main gear is now installed there. The swash plate is running on the main mast. When you install it, what you want to do is put the bolt through at the bottom, obviously, to secure the gear in place, and then pull the rotor head up as hard as you can to force the main gear against the bottom bearing block here. At the same time, you want to push the mast collar down, so you're pulling the rotor head up, pushing the mast collar down, and then with a spare hand do up one of the grub screws, and then that holds the whole rotor head in tension and the mast in tension, so that there's no vertical play in the shaft when you pull on the rotor head. And that's the rotor head installed into the frames. I can maybe give you a little bit of a view of the bolt at the bottom of the gear there, and then you can see the shaft sticking out the top of the frames. Now is the time to do up these bearing block screws on either side with the main shaft in place. So Loctite all of these now and do them up nice and tight. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to do is install the motor into the frames, and then I've got some control rods to install around the rotor head. Once that's done, we're really onto the electrical installation, speed controller, servos, gyro, etc, etc. Before we do that though, I want to put the motor in, because whilst the frames are free of servos, radio gear, it's very easy to be able to see to set the mesh on the pinion to the main gear. So I've got the motor here. I've already installed the 14 tooth pinion on it as suggested in the manual, which is the one I'm going to try the motor on first. And we now need to bolt that into the frames and set our mesh. Okay, something I just need to show you here is having tried to put the motor into the frames, I've discovered that actually this new motor is pretty large and it won't go in without making some adjustments to the frames themselves in order to get it to go in. So I've undone the screw here and angled my battery tray up. I've undone the screws either side here on the motor mount, and I've also pushed the motor mount up as far as it will go. Once you do that, you're able to take your motor with the pinion removed, insert it in the front there like that, and then it will sit down into the frames like that, and then you can push your motor mount back down again, push that back down again, and get on with installing the motor. Okay, and there we have the motor installed, and if I rock the gear you can hear the gear mesh there. Got a little bit of a gap, but not too much, nicely meshed. Okay, so from a mechanical perspective, apart from putting on the control rods now for the rotor head, we're pretty much done, so that's the next task. Okay, and here we have the made up linkage rods to complete the linkages on the rotor head. These are the blade grip linkages that go from the blade grip to the upper mixer arm, and these are the linkages that go from the upper mixer arm down to the center balls on the swash plate. And these are set as per the manual, so there is a 2mm gap here and a 37mm gap here. I'm just going to fit those to the head and show you those in position. Okay, so here we have our blade grip link fitted from here to the upper mixer, and then if I just bring the camera down a bit. Okay, there we go, brought the camera down, and this is our other link, which is going from the upper mixer here down to the centre ball on the swash plate. We just swivel that a little bit and you can see the upper mixer there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to move on to is fitting the linkages that go from the swash plate ball here. Let's just bring the camera down a little bit. Okay, so the swash plate ball here, and it goes down to this ball here. So it's the linkage rod from here to here. So I'm going to make those up next, and then once we've got those in place, we can go ahead and install our servos and fit the linkage rods for the servos. Okay, and here we have those two rods made up, and this gap here now is 31.5mm as per the manual, and I'm now going to fit those to the machine. Okay, and there we have that control rod now fitted to the machine, going from our aileron control horn up to the swash plate ball. So that's all the control rods now complete for the rotor head, and we're now having to fit control rods for these balls and for the elevator arm and for the aileron arm the other side. But before we can do that, we need to install the servos, so that's the next job.